Welcome to The Breakdown with INFB. I'm your host, Heidi Gant. Today we're talking with an Indiana Farm Bureau legend. If you've been involved with Indiana Farm Bureau in any capacity in the past few decades, you've known this familiar face. Mark Sigler is INFB's Chief Operating Officer and Treasurer, a position he's held since 1994. In that position, he oversees the organization's staff and budget, as well as the general operation of INFB's headquarters. After 38 years of dedicated service, Mark plans to retire on September 1st when Chief Administrative Officer Megan Ritter will take his place. So we wanted to sit down with Mr. Sigler today and chat about his time here at Farm Bureau and what all has changed in his 38 years. So welcome to the podcast, Mr. Sigler.
Thank you, Heidi.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning. Let's talk about your agriculture background and farm operation.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say I'm doing this under protest because I don't ever like talking about me. And I think I gave directions to the marketing team when I started, just don't ever take a picture of me or quote me. So I like to work behind the scenes. So it's a little different for me, but
well, we appreciate it that you're coming on here then.
Thank you. I guess one time I'm retiring. I'm only going to do that one time.
One and done. That's all right.
I can do it. The little bit of history. I live on the farm I grew up on, live in the house I was raised in. Both my parents are deceased, and we had a small farm growing up, and I still live there. We have the ground. My brothers and sister and I own that, and we have that's rented out, so we're not farming that. But we've got a barn and facilities where we've kept livestock for the grandkids in 4-H. Just finished the 4-H fair last week, and so that's all been a part of us, all during my lifetime. And my wife Dee Dee and I live there and enjoy that part of what we're planning on in retirement, to be more a part of that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like everything you just said sounds like your retired life that you're planning to have is on the farm there.
Yeah. And both our family grew up on the farm. Both grandparents farmed, and so it's all close, and all my grandkids are close there, and Dee Dee and I, and look forward to being able to spend more time with family and those kind of things moving forward.
Awesome. So let's start at the beginning. You were first hired in 1987, and you came into the commodity department. We don't have a commodity department anymore. So what was your role, and where did you see your career going at that point when you started in 87?
Well, when I started in 87, as you mentioned, the commodity department, so I started with a program called AgriVisor. It was an Illinois program, marketing, and so we gave advice. They had advisors that gave advice on prices of grain, where that was going, prices of livestock, and they had that program that they offered to Indiana, and it was done by closed-circuit radio. So this was before computers, pretty much. Home computers, desk computers, and all those kind of things were just about to take off, but hadn't yet. And so you could have a radio was set with towers around the state. You could have a radio set in there, and they'd broadcast a couple of times a day with prices of commodities, and so farmers liked that. It was a little unique. You subscribed to that, and so I coordinated that program when I first started at Farm Bureau.
Okay, so, and then even earlier, what did you want to do when you left Purdue? So I guess I probably should have started there. What brought you to Farm Bureau? So you graduated from Purdue, and was there something that happened at Purdue that kind of spurred your interest in what you ended up doing?
Probably not, but it got me here, I guess. The one thing, when I was at Purdue, I did livestock judging and meats judging, and had a really great team that we had when I was at Purdue, and we were able to win several contests, including the big contest at Louisville. And so I love to judge livestock. I did that when I got out of college and judged a lot of county fairs and those things, beef cattle at that point. And so I had a lot of interest in that. And so Farm Bureau in their commodity department had a carcass program, carcass evaluation, and they went into packing plants, measured carcasses. They had a live show most of the time where they'd have pigs that would be on foot, live, judge those, and they'd be taken to a carcass plant, and then we would measure those and give them the data. That was done before all the computer stuff, and so you couldn't get that otherwise. And so Farm Bureau had that program, did it all over the state, And I was really interested in that with my livestock background and judging background. And so that was a big attraction. And John Ball, who a lot of people know, works at Purdue now. And he was here as a lobbyist. But before that, he was in the commodity department, and he did that carcass program. And so that kind of led me to Farm Bureau, because I had worked with John on some carcass programs with Purdue. And we had kind of worked together enough that when he moved to the legislative department as a lobbyist, that opened up a spot in the commodity department. So John called me and said maybe I ought to apply for that job. And so that kind of led there, even though I did the agrivisor work, because a fella named Gary Percival, who was here, actually moved over to John's spot and did the carcass work mostly. But I still got to help with that. And so that was kind of the attraction that got me to Farm Bureau, because of the work they did there. Of course, that program's changed, right after that, a couple of years, all those packing plants changed. There used to be an Emge's that was at Anderson and Fort Branch, Wilson's, northern part of the state. That's a Tyson. You have Indiana Packers now, and all those small plants kind of went away, and then they got computerized, so they can provide that data, and so that program all went away. And so when that happened, I obviously didn't have a chance to do any more carcass work.
Well, so that brings up a good point. What has been some of the biggest changes you've seen in Farm Bureau? Maybe not just in Farm Bureau, but the ag industry in general. What are the biggest changes you've seen since you've started here? Obviously, computers. That's
technology.
A big one. Yep.
Yeah, technology. I can remember going to a program talking about the internet.
Yeah.
It was a training to talk about the internet. So we didn't have that. It was all new. We didn't have, when I started, we didn't have desktop computers. Those were added just a year or two after I started. And so, if you think about that, the cell phones that we use today, they're really
that we're
not
attached to.
Really not phones,
right.
They're computers. And so all that changed how we do things. And I think that is since in my time, it's been the biggest change. We've also changed a lot of other things. We started at 130 East Washington Street with the Farm Bureau building. And so the building we're in today and doing this program from, happened to be, a new, an old rubber factory that was redone. And we made good use of that and added parking and meeting rooms, a lot of those kind of things. So I saw that change as well. And then, of course, all the changes I've seen in agriculture, the consolidation of farms. Our farm, we probably had 450, 500 acres, some rented, 300 or so owned. And so all those farms consolidated. Every farm had fences, when we started. And so all those fences went out. Consolidation, larger farms. And then today you see more diversity in farms. It's not just corn, soybeans, but you got a lot of retail ag places, farm wines and lots of different things. So the diversity of agriculture as well as the size of farms has been biggest changes.
Is that hard as a professional in an industry that you've been a part of for so long? Is that hard to adapt to change like that, or is that exciting to you to keep doing new things?
Well, it's a little of both. It's exciting because it opens up new doors, that you didn't have before. But it's also a little pressure sometimes because you're not quite sure where that's headed.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen all at once. Those fences started to come out. You saw a little bit of that, and then you saw more of it, and you saw consolidation with larger equipment, and you saw some of that, but it didn't all happen at once. And so that part kind of helps you ease into some of those things, but it certainly opens up a lot more opportunities for programming and things that we do at Farm Bureau.
So for the ag industry in general in Indiana, what do you see are some of the biggest challenges or opportunities in today's time? What are some things that you think in the future we may struggle to figure out, or maybe it may be a good thing that we need to figure out some differences in some things?
Well, I really don't see a lot of differences in terms of what we have to do. Now, the technology changes, equipment changes, and those kind of things, but it's still a lot about people, and that's what Farm Bureau does. And I think that's one of the great things I've enjoyed about my job is just a lot of the great people I've had the opportunity to work with. So you can change the problems, you can change the challenges and how people farm and the equipment and technology, but it still comes down to people.
Yeah.
And you're working with people and how you can get people organized in a way that help them. It's like just a few years ago we had the health plans that we offered, and that came through delegates saying, hey, the cost of health care and access as a farmer, we don't have group plans and all that. So we were able to put a program together through Tennessee Farm Bureau that helped, not everybody, but helped a lot of those folks. And so that, I think, is what we're going to continue to do. If we can continue to stay close to farmers, all varieties of farmers, and have the ability to work with them, identify problems and ways we can help them, I think that continues to be how we operate.
Well, and I think that's why we have been such a great organization that has had longevity, is because of our grassroots nature. That's what we were built on, and it sounds like that's what's been the best part about what we do. So I guess to go off of that, what are you most proud of accomplishing of your time at INFB? Is it the health plans? Is it something else?
No, I think, again, in more general terms, the time I've been here, we've been able to strengthen our finances as an organization, and I feel as treasurer really good about that. I think we've continued to offer programs, change programming, if you will, to meet what those needs are, and I'm proud of that as well. And again, it goes back to the people serving folks and what their needs are.
So do you have other issues you hope to see addressed in future legislative sessions? I know we talked about the health plans. Policy is a big part of what we do at Farm Bureau, has always been and will be in the future. Are there things that you may come back to the State House and help us advocate on in the future? Or
you might have to change that. I'm not the big State House person.
Yeah.
I've always said that. But yes, I think that the tax issues will continue to be challenges, and how we operate, the liability issues for farms and some of those kind of things that we got into a little bit of this last session with roads and things. And so I think those continue to be challenges for us, which, is a to-do list. We got a to-do list. It's pretty long, and I think there'll be those kind of things moving forward.
Yeah.
So,
and what do you see as something that, as you hand this over to Miss Megan Ritter, what do you want to say to Megan and our staff, as what are your hopes for Farm Bureau as you kind of leave your legacy here, and what do you want your legacy to be here?
Well, I want things to go well. That's always one of my favorite sayings, that whatever meeting I'm in, whatever project it is, I want things to go well. And with that, I mean, it's really the people working together to solve the problems. And so my advice is, to continue to have building relationships. I think that's, as I look at my career, there was no plan in terms of where I ended up here. I mentioned the carcass program. That's kind of what attracted me to Farm Bureau. It wasn't being the chief operating officer or the treasurer, but I've been fortunate timing-wise where, we did away with the carcass programs. You think, well, my job is kind of going away. I'm going to go somewhere else. Well, at that time, then we had some retirements and some staff changes, and so a place opened up in the what was called the organization department then, which is now field services. And so I had the opportunity, was put in a job to head up the field staff. And so that worked out good for me. And then few years later, somebody retires, and I ended up being, the corporate secretary, chief operating officer, and then the treasurer retired, and I ended up being treasurer. So the timing has been really good for me. But I think it all starts, and my advice would be to build relationships. That's what will help you. If you're young and starting out, build that network, build relationships, value people, and be kind and considerate, enjoy what you do. Don Vilwalk, president here, one of his favorite sayings was, he's never worked a day in his life because he loves what he's doing, whether it's farming or agriculture or Farm Bureau. And I think that's good advice. If you enjoy what you're doing every day, you can come to work and be excited. And we've got some really good people that are here, new young people. You're one of those that I can just see so much, potential in, and things that are going to be good moving forward. That's what excites me, and I just want that to continue.
Yeah, well, I love to hear that, and I think that's great parting advice. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you today that you want to make sure our members know going forward?
Well, my thing is about kind of adding on to the people. I just appreciate a lot of the help I've gotten. You know, you never do anything by yourself, you know, and I think that is so true that if I look back, a lot of mentors, people that have helped me, given me good advice, been supportive. You know, I don't really want to get started into names. I'll leave somebody out.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of people that I can give thanks to that along the way I built relationships with, and they've just been so helpful and kind in giving me good advice, supporting, doing things that just made things go well.
Okay. Well, I love it. Thank you so much for doing this,
Thank
Mark.
you,
I
Heidi.
know he did. He came kicking and screaming, but he came. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
One time.
Yes,
Heidi.
right. I won't ask you again. I promise.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Heidi.
If you enjoyed our conversation today, make sure to subscribe to The Breakdown with INFB and even rate and review us to let us know how we're doing. For more information, visit www.infb.org/podcast.